Hey there, my name's John Schock. This is my final project based on the three Christs. So a basic description of this movie is that we're following a Dr. Alan Stone, who's a psychiatrist attempting to treat three schizophrenic patients, because as we know, schizophrenia is not yet curable, unfortunately. And so we have to follow the medical model of just treating this deviation, right? This disorder. This movie is set at the Ypsilanti State Hospital in Michigan, which is depicted at the right here. Of course, this is just a picture of the abandoned hospital, which is why it looks so sad, so dilapidated. And moving on with the movie, all three patients are going to meet with each other eventually, and all of them have different backgrounds affecting them and their related traumas. And the movie progresses from there. So concerning the disorder itself of schizophrenia, from class, we've learned how complex this mental disorder can really be. Driven mainly by psychosis, symptoms of schizophrenia include hallucinations, disorganized thought, general delusions, social withdrawal, and the absence of motivation and pleasure. The delusions of the patients in this film all lead them to believe that they are the one and only Son of God, Jesus Christ, as I'm sure you could figure from the title. So it makes sense that these characters be diagnosed with schizophrenia as well, because as we have learned from class, schizophrenic people tend to have very difficult times distinguishing, fantasy from reality. And as it would really happen, none of them are Jesus, go figure. Within the movie itself too, we learn about the backgrounds of each of these patients, at least just little brief portions of them. For example, one of the patients, he dealt with a devoutly religious mother, and he also suffered sexual assault trauma. Another one of the patients had very bad anger issues, and so he was admitted into an institution in which he would undergo shock therapy, which would subsequently have him develop a fear for his sanity and safety. And then another one of the characters as well, he couldn't cope with the death of his wife because she had to undergo an abortion, and of course it didn't turn out well. Moving on from this, we can consider broader perspectives as to how these characters are affected, how these patients are affected, what these mental disorders are doing to them, and what society can potentially do for them. So one of the first things I wanted to point out here was that the victims of schizophrenia in general, not just these three patients and in their context, in their backgrounds, any victim of schizophrenia can be affected by their outside culture significantly. So the main thing I want to drive is that cultures may affect how schizophrenia may manifest itself. A good way to think of what I mean by this is that imagine the victims of schizophrenia within Western society compared to the victims of schizophrenia in Eastern society. In Eastern society, religions such as Buddhism and Hinduism are very much so more prevalent than they are in Western society. In Western society, we see schizophrenia as something to be medically dealt with, something that needs to be treated, whereas oftentimes in Eastern society, the culture attacks the problem of schizophrenia very differently. Of course, there still is a medical aspect to their approach. However, there's also this evocation of spirituality and spiritual significance from these hallucinations that schizophrenic people might endure over there, which I think is it's a very interesting concept that I'm sure if it's something to be studied and to analyze. And anyways, moving on from this, schizophrenia under the medical model itself, as we've learned from class, as I mentioned, it cannot be cured, but it can be treated. So in our ways in society of treating schizophrenia as well, we are not trying to get them to conform to societal standards, of course, because that's impossible. These people are deluded. And you have you have them believing in ridiculous things and in things that just simply cannot be true. And even though rationally and logically you can prove that to them, that what they're saying is not true, that they in fact cannot be Jesus Christ, and that people around them are lesser gods, right? No matter what, they will still live inside their delusions, and there's nothing to be done about that. So anyways, this is my works cited page. I hope you enjoyed this brief presentation. Have a good night.